Randy.
Hey, what's up, Zach? How you doing?
Hi, it's very nice to meet you. And again, like I've said on this podcast a lot, it's so great to meet people that you've admired or that you've heard of, or that just other guitar players. And that's why I love doing this. And this is definitely the case because we've never met IRL, as the kids say. But you also feel, because of this thing that we do, you also feel like you kind of know somebody. You and me have been talking for a few minutes now, and it seems like, I mean, we could probably talk for hours. We've done the same thing. You have that shared experience of, I could talk to you for like 2 minutes ago. Oh, this guy's loaded a van before. You know what
Yes.
I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, great to meet you too. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
a fan of the podcast and a fan of the band. So yeah,
Oh, thank you so much.
It's an honor to be here. Thanks, man.
Well, I appreciate you doing it and taking the time, and I'm a fan of your band as well. And when it was, pitched to be able to talk to you, I was like, that's exactly who I want to talk to. That's exactly the person that needs to do this podcast. We can dive right in. So how did you start playing guitar? What was your catalyst?
Oh
What
man.
brought you to it?
Yeah, so I grew up in Southern California, just in the suburbs of LA, and I had an older brother, Sam, who passed away when he was 25, and he was a guitar player and a skateboarder. Oh yeah, it's all right. It was a lot of years ago. So I think I was 12 at the time. And so I sort of, I inherited a lot of his stuff, literally and spiritually and everything else.
Yeah,
he was a hero of mine. And so I went from, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Vanilla Ice and The Simpsons into Nirvana and Sonic Youth and that kind of world. So I inherited his record collection of things and literally his guitar. My first guitar was his old guitar. And all of the emotional stuff that comes with the grieving process that I didn't understand in my adolescence, I sort of glommed onto this guitar as my way of connecting with him. And I still do. I think it's been a lifelong sort of relationship with, with grief in that sort of way, but also in celebration and creativity and all those things. So I didn't understand it like that at the time. It was just a kind of mopey,
I wasn't prepared
sort of
for that answer. I wasn't prepared for that answer. It's amazing. I think that's the best answer I've had yet. And I also have an older brother that I mean, my condolences, and B, if anything happened to my older brother, I don't know what. My brother, he's also a professional musician. He plays bass in the band, the Toadies, and him and I came up playing in bands together. And anyway, that's awful, but also beautiful in a turn of in a way to turn it positive, that it started this career and this lifelong obsession for you, that it turned it into something positive.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely something that I felt, like I said, at the time, I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't take lessons, but it was sort of just me plugging away at it. I think was also some kind of therapy or catharsis. And then as life went on, I think I just appreciate it, so much, in the sense that like, it was a gift. It was a gift, literally, like he gave me a guitar, but also, just sort of, I looked up to him. He was a cool guy, and he had a skate shop, and like I said, and, played guitar and did all these cool things that just were a huge influence on me in my life. And I've just kind of used that as that, I think when you're in a, sorry, how do I say it? Like when you're a teenager, your adolescent stuff, like that sort of imprints heavy on you regardless, and without losing a family member. But I think I just had this whole other kind of mixed up emotional enmeshment with that time of my life. Like, oh yeah, this is great. And just sort of brought that forward in a way that I think I've been able to mature somewhat. I don't know. You'd have to ask my wife. I don't know. I still live in adolescence in some ways. You know what I mean?
We all do, don't we?
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
The life of a musician, you're always in a perpetual state of adolescence, which I think is amazing. And that's why I stay in this life. I mean, let's face it, we're modern day pirates. You know what I mean? We get in this vehicle and we just, forge on and by hook or crook and all that shit. But I think it keeps us young. It's funny getting ushered into or being introduced to music or this lifestyle or this culture by an older person. My dad was the guy for me. And then I don't know, and my dad also passed. I don't know if oh, thank you. But it's the same thing. It's kind of like you almost you get that extra drive that other people don't really have, because you're also trying to make them proud of you. The memory of them proud of you.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think over the years, like I said, I think I've done a lot of kind of emotional work in therapy and out and sort of things. But I think I had to sort of figure out like, oh yeah, what is it that I want? And what is it that I think I'm fulfilling of somebody else's dream that he didn't get to do? I think
Yeah,
it kind of at some point I had to put a fine point on it just for my own sort of sanity to understand like,
sure.
am I doing this? Am I living someone else's dream? Am I living my own? And I think if in a lot, but I do think in some ways, though, if a lot of us are honest, we play that stuff out through your 20s regardless, like you know what I mean,
Absolutely.
whether it's a controlling father, an absentee father, or parental figure, insert whatever that is, mom, dad, uncle, brother. I think that's just part of a natural cycle of understanding yourself and your family and your place in the world, and how do you
Sure.
measure success, especially when you're a dumb kid in your 20s? What does success look like? Is it, for me it was going on tour and playing
Right.
music, and that just felt like something I was like, yes, if I can play in front of 10 people, then I've succeeded. The bar was set pretty
Absolutely.
low. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the same exact thing. It was just getting in a van, getting from one gig to the next. That was success. Being able to tie that together and do that with for the most of your life, the bulk of your existence was spent in aid to music. That was success to me.
Yeah.
Um, well, I would think that and you did that, and you accomplished that, and here you are, and I think that's highly commendable.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, sorry to flip it around. What was your first guitar? I'm so curious how that
My first
works.
guitar. Well, I was about to ask you what that.
Yeah. Oh
Two
yeah.
questions. I'll answer. I'll answer. But
Okay.
there's two
Yeah.
questions. One is, do you still have that guitar? And B, what is it? Okay, mine
Yeah.
was a really shitty acoustic that was so huge, and the action was so high on it. And I was a little. I was 9, and I could get inside the case and like close the case. And then it was in the '60s, like Tiesco and Del Rey and all those those bad pawn shop guitars. They started making like their sort of versions of Offset, like their answer to
Yeah.
what would be a Jazz Master or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me grab mine. Hold on. I'll show you.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Mine might have been a Harmony Rocket, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's say it.
So there's a reason. Yeah. If you're watching this on
Yes,
video at home, yeah. Is
yes,
it
yes.
a
That's
Tiesco?
that's that's
Right.
exactly. I don't remember. But yeah, if people that can't see, it's like very Harmony or Silvertone. Um, Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fucking it. And I
Yeah.
spray painted. I was into thrash metal, so like I sprayed painted it black, and did all
Yeah.
this shit to it. I had the
Yeah.
body of it forever.
This one I wish I wouldn't have done it, but I put double humbuckers in it, and then I
I
tried
think
to
that's
fix it and
rad.
stuff. I should have just left it alone, but I think at some point I needed a proper guitar, so I was trying to turn
Yeah.
it into an
Wait,
SG or something.
is that the one that your brother left you?
Yeah, this is the one. Yeah,
No
exactly, the same
shit.
one. But he had the original pickups in it, and I played it in bands for years. And I tried to turn it into like a proper guitar, and then eventually I just bought a proper guitar and just left this one alone and
Yeah,
let it
I
be
think
what it
that's
is.
amazing. I
Yeah,
think that's amazing. I think that's amazing you have it, and that it is play. I mean, you could record with that. You have,
yeah, it's
I,
fully workable. I don't spend as much time on it. I've bought way too many other guitars,
well,
but it's still
as
there,
we do,
right?
it's a
Yeah.
lifelong. You'll never stop, my friend.
Oh my
Um,
god. Yeah.
so I have noticed in videos and watching you, you tend to gravitate toward like the Epiphone Sheridan, Epiphone Casino. Are you still doing that?
Yeah. So I can tell you. So kind of going from this, I went from this to an SG,
Okay.
and I loved the double humbucker, sort of the mids and stuff in that. And then when Dean and I got together and we're trying to figure out what a two-piece could be, what our version of a two-piece band would be,
Right.
I was trying to figure out like, oh well, this SG harmonically is just really mid. It's really just all high mids. And I was trying to figure out. I didn't, the two-piece thing was. I didn't know how much baggage there was attached to that. I think we kind of went in sort of naively. We're thinking of bands like Lightning Bolt or Godhead
Yeah.
Silo, but there's also obviously in those years too. Then there became the White Stripes or the Black Keys, or became a blues
Right.
kind of two piece, and so that was never really my intention to go down a blues road because I was a suburban punk kid. I didn't really have a blues itch at that age.
Right.
So, but I liked, you know, noise and stuff like that. So I was trying to go for like a more lightning bolt thing. So I wanted it to sound like all these things at once. So it sound like 3 guitars at one time. So then I went from an SG. So I thought, well, maybe because we'd already done our first record, and so I would do an SG for all the rhythm parts, and I would overdub it with try to, you know, layer up guitars, a high, mid, low thing.
Sure.
So I was looking for a guitar that could do those sounds, and I first got, excuse me, I was thinking of like Jesus and Mary Chain. I was like, oh yeah, they have big hollow body guitars. That sounds kind of cool. So then I got a Casino, which just fed back horribly. You know, there's just the P90s in a fully hollow thing that didn't really work. And then from there, I went to a Sheridan 2, an Epiphone Sheridan 2, which is kind of like the poor man's 335. Right. That's the block down the middle and the humbuckers. And that just seemed to work. So there's like a resonance to the body, which kind of works for the lower end stuff. And then the mids are obviously there. And then there's a chimey sort of thing. If everything's working right, I'll run 3 amps on stage and try to split them up in that sort of way, a high, mid, low sort of thing. And I felt the Sheridans, and I was just buying these things off Craigslist or you know, whatever was available then, like used things. And I found one that I really like, and it just sort of worked for me for all those things. But it was cheap enough also that I wouldn't be afraid if it got lost.
It makes sense too. You know, I think it's probably the same reason why, say, Geordie Walker and Killing Joke uses that, you know, big open hollow body for the same sort of, because there is the chimey thing happening. There's of course the low end. There's of course, you know, it just covers all this ground. Even though they've always had a bass player, but there's something about his tone that just, I mean, now it's like, oh, of course it's a hollow body, but he kind of explained it in the same way. Did you ever do anything for low end? Did you ever do anything? I know a lot of bands that have had 2 members, you know, there's maybe, say an octave divider, like something like where they're kind of getting low end happening. Did you ever do that?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I didn't really. I just kind of plugged it into a bass amp. You know, used a splitter. I had like a delay pedal. I had 2 outs, and so, okay, one goes to the guitar, one goes to the bass, and then we were. I mean, our journey as No Age, it kind of blew up faster than we were prepared for, and so I found us doing really professional things very unprofessionally. I was trying to play catch up as things were happening, and so a sound person we had, this guy Chris Colte, he was out with another band, or we were opening for the band that he was teching for, or he was engineering for, and he's like, "What are you doing? Like, you should get an octave pedal and put that in the bass amp and do these things." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I think I even got like a bass Sans amp as well, kind of run a DI. You know, he kind of schooled me. He's like, we literally went the next day to a guitar shop. He's like, buy this. I was like, okay. And
thank you, sir.
So I did. Yeah, okay. That sounded very technical. And so I've since kind of learned like how to sort of dial that in, and so I've refined that over the years. But yeah, and it's just the idea. If you play a power chord, you just want the low note, the root note, to sort of resonate and rumble, and I figure out how to dial that in with a bass amp and a bass. And so I still use a little bit of octave, but I've found over the years I've dialed it back less and less, because at some point that octave it's a strong flavor.
It's a strong flavor, and that's a great way to put it. And then, you know, of course, it's playing, it's continuously playing. Yeah, whatever you're doing, it's going, you know, and it just gets too fucking muddled up. But okay, that's interesting. You're still doing that. So you're running like a stereo rig with an actual bass side. Mm-hmm. And a guitar side. I see.
Yeah, I think a good way. I mean, if in a perfect world, I mean, obviously I'm nowhere near these players, but in terms of the sound I'm looking for is sort of like buzzcocks on the high end, those real chimey, like ding 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 ding. Yeah, that's sort of like like a buzzcocks guitar with then like a Malcolm Young, or even you know, Ron Aston, you know, guitar from the Stooges in the mids, and then like a real low rumbly fuzzy bass, like a White Zombie sort of bass. If I had all 3 of those people on stage at the same time, that would be my perfect goal of what my one guitar would sound like.
You know? All good references. And so, wow. Okay, so what amps have you sort of gravitated toward?
Yeah, so early on, I just had practice amps, like little kid amps, which was always fun. I traded my friend the Rage Against the Machine CD for his practice amp.
That's awesome.
And I still have that amp too. It's somewhere up here. It was great though, but that was the one that had like the distortion built into the amp, and so I liked that. And so I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna get more work out of this amp than I am listening to the CD. I already listened to it 10 times. I could use an amp, and so I had those little practice amps, and then luckily enough, just being in close enough to LA, there's so much gear floating around here in the suburbs and the surrounding areas. A friend of mine, he found a Marshall Club and Country, which is a cool brown. I don't know if you've ever seen those brown Tolexed. I think this is a 410, but with tubes. So it's all like EL 34 tubed out thing with 410s, and it was super loud and weird and top heavy. It would fall over all the time. And so I got that. So that was my first real proper amp. And that just sold me on just, tubes raging at loud volumes I was sold. So
you still have it?
I still have that one. Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to hold on to everything. I think because of my sort of emotional attachments, I don't get rid of anything.
Yeah,
but it's a bit like a collector thing. I just love it. It tells it's a story. I don't know. Are you like that, or do you get rid of gear?
No, I'm kind of like that. I mean, there's a lot of gear that I wish I still had, for sure. But there's also a lot of stuff that, like, I have a Marshall JMP head that I've had since 98, and I still use. It's my main head and writes against. It's on tour. It's been like modded twice, and so, but there's a ton of shit that, when I was broke and whatever, that pawn or trade, or there's that situation where you'd have like a guitar and you wanted a different guitar, so you had to trade that guitar in on another one, and a couple $100 or whatever the fuck. I did that shit a lot, and then I think back on those guitars, I'm like, fuck, there's so many I wish I could get back.
Yeah, it's so hard. I eventually found my way to a Sun Model T, because I was always trying to get louder and wanted a lower sort of guitar tone. And somebody, I think somewhere in 2001, 2002, said, "Oh, you should look at the Sun amp. They're known for being loud." So I was able to find one for $500. And I remember driving down to the guy's house, and I think I had to borrow money from friends. Even I didn't have the full 500. I was like, I'll pay you back the I think I had to borrow $200 from a friend just to make the 500. And I was like, as soon as I get paid, I'll pay it all to you. And so,
is that still what you're using?
Yeah, so I fell in love with Suns, and so the Model T was my first sort of thing. Like, wow, that thing just sounds amazing, especially the louder you get. I've come to learn, that the power section does something. The tube power section really, like, just growls and melts and compresses and oozes in such a great sort of way. So the Sun Model T was there, and then I went to a Sun Beta lead as well. So I'd pair those together. So I'd kind of do the Sun for the low mids, the growly low mids, and then the Beta lead also has a great distortion circuit in there, but I would use that more. I would use that more for the dentist drill, I would call it. Just those high trebles just go straight into your frontal cortex. So that's when we started No Age. Those were the two amps I was using, was a Beta lead through a 410, Beta lead combo, 212 combo, and then a Model T through a 412.
Well, that's funny. We've talked about the Sun a lot on this podcast, because I had Buzz from the Melvins on.
Yeah.
And I've just interviewed Brian from Red Fang. And, Red Fang have a pedal that is basically a Sun model, a Sun Beta lead in a pedal. I believe Earthquaker makes it.
No, Hilbish. Nathan Hilbish does those. Yeah.
Oh, no, Hilbish do make it, because Hilbish make the actual, like, I could have sworn they have one.
Earthquaker does the Sun band, the band Sun O. They do their.
They do. That's right. You're right. Yeah, that's what I got mixed up. And then Hilbish do the. Yeah. Fuck. I should know that, because I'm on a waiting list for the
Hilbish.
The Hilbish one. Yeah. For the Red Fang one. And
cool.
Laurel Stearns, their manager, is like a sister to me. She managed my band in the 90s, and I've even though I know their management, I'm still like, I want that fucking pedal. Anyway, so it's funny because the Sun O guys use the Model T, I noticed.
Yep.
and then those other dudes use the beta leads. But do you find that they're finicky? Do they kind of go down quick, or do you have to get it worked on a lot?
So the beta lead, so the Model Ts, no, they're like an old Chevy or something. It's all out in the open. It's just tubes. Is your almost point to point wiring. I mean, they're it's super simple tube amp. So
Gotcha.
the Model Ts you can keep going. The beta leads, yes, they're an early or late 70s, early 80s, kind of circuit board that it's like if an old calculator breaks, it's like, what are you going to do? You got to find the parts of a calculator, basically. And so there was a great guy, Andy, from Red Sparrows, right? He used to work on them here, and he's now up in San Francisco. So he was my beta lead guy. And he just knew how to find, and he had like a donor ones that were just too dead, and he could pull parts from it. But what's really cool that Nathan does at Hillbish is he's cloned them in a way that are very, very stable. And so I have a few of those as well. And,
that's my next question. Are you using the Hillbish models?
So yeah, I have those. I've honestly, the touring being what it is and being fortunate enough to fly around places, I've worked out a way where I can just kind of approximate a tone on a pedal board. It's become my newest obsession of getting the preamp in a box, sort of road. That's a whole rabbit hole you can go down there for years and years. But I've found a place that I'm very happy with. I just took it on this last tour, where I can get everything into a Pelican, carry on, and dial in a tone that's close enough, to what I would use, so that I don't have to worry about renting, beta leads or Model Ts or these things. And
have you tried the Red Fang Hillbish pedal?
Yeah, so he did a version of it called the Soul Invictus, which I think is the non-branded one, but it sounds amazing. It sounds so killer. Yeah, no, Nathan's a genius. I think, and I learned about him through Buzz, and I'm a big fan of the Melvins and their sound, and so it's just great. Oh yeah, it's just I'll still sound check with their cover of Going Blind, the Kiss cover they do off of Houdini. I'll sound check with that because I know the song and the tone so well in that song that I can kind of like, okay, just to get my own. Not that we sound anything like them, or I'm really trying to sound like Buzz, but I think it's just it's a nice kind of way of, you know what I mean. I think everybody has a riff that you kind of hear in a room and you just go, okay, am I dialed in? Can I hear? Is it sounding the way I want to sound?
Yeah.
Do you have a riff that you play?
Oh, I was just about to say, like, no band I've ever been in sounds like Anthrax, but I always try to sound like Anthrax. And then, or I'll sound check with Rock Bottom by UFO, which is the greatest rock and roll guitar riff ever written. And I sound check with that, and no band I've ever been in sounds like UFO. But fuck it.
But you know what it sounds like, and
I know what
happy
it sounds
spot.
like.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Speaking of the amp in a box, it's funny. We just did South America, and I was my first like inaugural tour with amp profiling. I have a Kemper now, and so
cool.
we Kempered. And I was so Luddite and like Cro-Magnon about like throwing stones at that new idea, and man, I got to admit, it sounds fucking great, and it was consistent in my ears every night. It was like like if in South America you have to rent gear a lot, and so it'll show up with a blown fuse, or it just and it's du jour. It's like amp du jour, and you're just trying, And then Brian Baker, he was on this podcast, and he Kempers now, and he's like, that dude was a holdout. Everything was vintage. He tours with a '57 Junior, and and he was just like, man, he profiled his one like Jubilee head from the late '80s, so he has one profile in it, but it sounds excellent, and that's all he uses. I'm like, fuck, So
that's incredible. And then do you run it into a cab on stage, or are you just getting everything in the ear?
Well, in South America, we did not, because we were doing a lot of Lollapalooza shows and then our own. And so we were going cabless. So of course, that's the argument really can be made if you don't go cabs. But I have the powered Kemper. So we did residency at the Metro to finish. We did 3 nights at the Metro for their like 40th anniversary or whatever. And I did run cabs on stage, and it was fucking great, man. But for like what you were talking about, Seymour Duncan make the power stage. I believe it's a power amp. So it's the size of a pedal. It's a 500-watt power amp. You throw that on there, but also there's the goddamn Neural DSP, and Quad Cortex, and it's just a profiler with like, it already has the pedal board on top of it. It's got 8 switches. You can drag and drop what pedals you want to be at each switch. You can profile with it, but it comes loaded with every amp you can fucking imagine, you know.
It's insane. No, I think we are living in the future. You know,
We
I think
really
about
are,
that.
man.
I think about that every day. Like, you know, my wife commutes from home, you know, from the office in our house. You
It's
know,
true.
she's like, okay, I'm time to go to work, and she'll just walk down the hall, and it's like, this is some George Jetson kind of shit that we're living
George
in. You know?
Jensen shit. Because, you know, you could profile your Model T and your Beta Lead and in a box and just fucking take that with you on the plane, you know. And
Yeah.
here's the thing, and if the argument can be made like, oh man, you're losing so much of the tone, it's like you're not. You're really not. You know?
Yeah, no, and you know, and I think we're of the same kind of cut of guitarists as most guitarists I think are in this zone of the only people who actually give a shit are us. The people playing, the people in the audience don't give a shit. I've learned this over the years. Like the night when I have the best tone ever and I'm just loving it, it's the best. No one says shit. No one ever compliments that stuff. And then when it's really bad and I'm just in the dumps and it sounds the god awful worst dog shit guitar tone you've ever had, no one says anything. They love it just, you know, and not that
or
you know,
on the other end, they come to you like, dude, this is the best show I've seen from you guys,
yeah.
and you're like, I sounded like shit up there. They don't fucking.
No, it's all for yourself. So whatever makes you happy. So it becomes that the psychological sort of game that you play with yourself of like, does this sound good enough to make me stoked to play these songs for an hour and a half or whatever? You know, can I find a place of being really happy out there with this, hearing my guitar sound this way, whatever that means for you, whatever it's, you know what I mean? Then, and if you can do that trick in your brain, then you're like, cool, this is great. I haven't had the opportunity. Yeah, I haven't had the opportunity to go digital with anything. I really went very, very boots on the ground sort of setup where I'm just using these, you know, it's kind of tiny dirt pedals. You know, Earthquaker makes a great approximation of a Model T called the Acapulco Gold. And it's it's a one knob, sort of big drivey, big dirty, you know, sort of preamp of a Model T type, you know, sound, super heavy gain, and it's kind of wild, and it comes in a box. And this last run we did in Europe, I just got 2 small Fender Deluxes and I strapped them together so I could get it high up. And the one thing I really want is it to be loud in my ear. I just hate having my like kneecaps blown with the sound. I want to hear it. You know, that's again, because I'm the only one that cares. I'll blow my ears out on stage rather than the poor kid on in the front, you know, at the front of the stage getting all my amp. He doesn't need to hear it that loud. I do though. Yeah. So I just stacked everything up and strapped him down with two really cheap Fender Deluxe, you know, 112s. And I just flatted those out, so they just worked as like a power amp. And then I just ran these pedals in there, you know, just to really like blow it up. And for me, again, especially for the size of places that we were playing, it was perfect. It was very down and dirty. Awesome. You know what I mean? There's a way to do it I think that's much more involved and precise. But for me, again, like I said, that was a lot of the psychological trick of like, does this feed back when I stop playing in a way that I like it to? Does it sound good when I hit the thing? Do I feel it like I'm hitting something? Yeah, you know, that's that kind of thing. And it ticked all those boxes. And I was like, this is great. This works, and it's cheap and it's affordable, and I can travel, and I'm not breaking the bank or my back. And so that's kind of where I got to, you know. Yeah. Well,
and I'll tell you something. I was afraid, speaking of feedback, that with the profilers that, you know, because it's all digital, there is a good amount of feedback. Like I found myself having to wrestle with it, you know, to like roll off like really kind of kill the guitar and stuff, which was really impressive. And then I also, maybe it was psychological, but I noticed certain frequencies in my ears, at least, because we're all fucking ears, like certain mids and highs that I didn't have with the regular amp. And we didn't have time. Like, by the way, this was my first tour on profilers. We bought them, went to South America. So like the sound check, you know, was like, and I just went for the 800 profile that was already in the Kemper. And I added a little more gain to it. So like, you know, kind of hot rodded an 800, which is basically, I have a hot rodded GMP, but man, it was fucking amazing. It was great.
That's so cool. I'm all for progress. You know, I think there's definitely those camps of like all this or all that, but I think we're probably in similar boats again, where it's just, at the end of the day, you know, you can cork sniff all you want, but when you got to go out every night and do it again and again and again, we're fortunate enough to be able to play shows and
Right.
to play a lot of shows. There becomes a tool. Like, does this work? Does this make my life easier?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, you know, and you may make some consignments or some compromises, but at the end of the day, it's your job.
Yeah, exactly. I need this thing
to work.
I need
every
this thing
night.
to be consistent. That's really all it is. Like, I just need it to fucking work and work well. That's all. And I still use an analog pedal board. You know, some people like profile their pedal board and in that they have like the Kemper switcher in front of them. I still use an analog pedal board, and you know, I try to still make it as, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure there's always an easier way to do things. That's right. It's that constant back and forth of like, how easy and how fun can I make, you know?
Yeah.
I still want to feel something. Yeah. I'm to the point where I don't like the pedal boards that have the stuff underneath it. You know, I still just want everything on the floor. Like, I'll just make my own with like MDF from Home Depot and just put the Velcro on it. Like, I just want it flat. And even with all the wires and cables and everything else showing, like, I don't care. That way I can troubleshoot it easier. If something does, God forbid, go down, I want to be able to see it. I don't want to have to flip the thing over like a car and work underneath it and then come back around. It's like,
yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
I keep it just super easy. And again, but it's everybody's own thing. You know what I mean? I was talking with a friend. Yeah. And there's like that, you know, there's a million ways to do things. And as guitar players, we are overconfident with no, reason to back it up. We're nothing but confidence with no knowledge of why we are that confident. We don't deserve to be that confident. We've not earned it, but yet we won't stop us. So we all think we know the right perfect way to do it. But if it works for you.
And we also don't suffer a poverty of choice. I mean, there is so much out there that's constantly getting pushed, you know, so there's always new ways to do it. There's always a new widget or something to fucking, you know, and like you said, we live in the future where it's just getting smaller and smaller and better, you know. Like, it went from like having Marshall full stacks behind you has almost become a boomer thing, you know what I mean? It's like, it's belaboring some, you know, the people that are out with you or yourself or whatever, and when it sounds better and it's smaller and it's whatever, it's like, well, fuck, how am I going to argue with that, you know? Cool.
I've carried enough 410s and flight cases upstairs to last me, or 810s.
Yeah,
I've moved refrigerators. I've done it. I remember we played a show early on, and it was a house show in the South somewhere, and it was like one of the tight spiral staircases. You know, we had to go 4 stories up and just carry, and it's raining, and so the stairs are slippery. Just you carry all that stuff up there, and I was only 22 or something, but I remember thinking like, fuck this shit.
Yeah, fuck.
And I still did it for another 20 years after that. And then you kind of get to the point where like, I've paid all the dues. I've banged up all my knuckles on every doorway you go, carrying a cab through a thing, you know, just it's really fun to do it again. But not to feel like an old man, but I'm I'm north of 40 in guitar and rock and roll terms. You know, that's Wilford Brimley territory, and I don't mind. I've come to a point where I don't. I mean, why would I pretend to be a kid? I've all my scars and all my experiences are badges of honor. You know,
exactly. It totally is. And you and I guys like us paid our dues. We toured in vans. We traversed the U.S. We played to no one. We slept on floors. You know, we earned our right to fucking carry one Pelican that has everything in there. God damn it.
And sleep in a Holiday Inn, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And shake our fists at the clouds. Kids these days. But I've noticed kids like combos. Like our younger players like little combos.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, they're not impressed.
Shit is just smaller nowadays. Like when you and I were younger, it was like we bought a half stack. You went to guitars and you bought
that was
like
normal.
A combo amp was what you practiced with, you know. And I think it was like maybe the Strokes were the first band on like a stadium level that I noticed had like Hot Rod DeVille's behind them or whatever, you know, like whoa, holy shit, and it was cool. It was cool looking. It was like, oh wow, they're bucking the system, you know, like good on them. I didn't know it was the sign of things to come. And, like Brian, I have to mention Brian Baker again. The guy used to always give me shit about my gear. And I'll admit on this and not to him that he was sort of my North Star for gear. You know, I would okay, well, if he's using it, I'll use it. And then he's using the Kemper. So I was like, oh, fuck it, I'll give it a shot.
You know, I love his 1 guitar in 1 minute profile he does on his guitars. It's so inspiring.
They're the best. We were trying to make one happen. I had a guitar out that he liked a lot, and we were trying to do one and make one happen of him doing that guitar, but it didn't work out.
Oh man.
I just spoiled, and he's gonna be mad at me for that. So
Well, I was
speaking
just
of,
gonna.
go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. Let me jump in, but before we get off, how many house shows did you play to like 10 kids with a full stack, or at least a
Oh
half
my
stack?
God.
Right?
A half stack, it was the 90s pretty much, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I had.
Yeah. But
It's
again,
all,
there was no reason to be that loud, but it was
there's no
fun.
fucking reason to be that loud. You could have
But
done it with 112.
yeah, but how fun was that? That was just
Oh, it
what it
was
was. Like,
so much fun.
cool. You know what? I was fortunate enough to we played on David Letterman before he was off the air, and
Oh,
this was
that's
our
awesome.
first. We got to fly cross country and be on big TV show, and so I packed my Model T. I was like, there's no way I'm going to go on there with rented gear. I'm bringing my own gear if I'm going to be on TV. So I brought my Model T, but I did rent the cabs. So we had, I wasn't going to ship 412s, but I had, I think 3 full stacks. It was a bit of a J Mascis, sort of
That's
like
awesome.
play. And so I had just the Beta Lead head and the Model T and then an SVT stack. And I remember the you're not allowed to touch anything because it's a Teamsters union. It's their Broadway, union people that
Yeah.
move amps. You can't move your own amp. So we get there at 6 a.m. in the morning and it's freezing, and the union guys roll it out like, who's here, Metallica? Like, what is this? What kind of assholes are bringing this much equipment for a fucking TV taping? And I just remember thinking, like, don't they know this is cool? Don't they know this is like the coolest thing I could? That's the coolest thing I thought I could do. To be on TV and have all these loud amps. And
I bet it looked great, though.
I had fun with it, but I felt like I got called out by 60-year-old guy who had to roll my amp out on a riser. He's like, this kid's a dick. Why does he bring so many amps?
Those Teamsters are hysterical. I remember playing the Roseland, which was right there around the corner, and it's not there anymore. But played there in the 90s with, I think it was like the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones and Sick of It All. And those Teamsters just sitting there all day. And they actually let us load our own shit.
Oh, how nice.
And
That's
just
good.
watched us sitting on a couch, just kind of like, raise their beer at us like, hi, sir.
Yeah.
Speaking of early days, and by the way, bless Jay Mascis for still going. He's still 3 fucking full stacks. I mean, I'm saying.
And the best part is the Fender reverb pointed right at his head coming back. That's amazing. His monitor. The 3 stacks, okay, that's one thing. But then to put the Fender Twin at full volume right back at your head, there's the cherry on top.
I sleep well knowing that Jay Mascis is still out doing. They're doing it for all of us. Because I'm talking all this shit, but I still really respect the guy that's gonna fucking go for it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I don't have to do it. Yeah,
I don't have to do it.
Yeah, he's doing it for me. Yeah,
it's in our DNA as guitar players that we just think that shit's cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of so early days, how did you guys? We went down this fucking crazy rabbit hole of all this shit. How did you guys actually start? Like, were you in other bands and
Yeah, so I was kind of a bedroom. I got a 4-track shortly after in high school, and so I was just kind of documenting my sort of sad lo-fi songs that I didn't really know much about. So I did that, and then went to college, and then in college right before I went to college, I found this club, this all ages club in LA called The Smell, and I went and saw Mike Watt play solo there. I saw it was like in the newspaper, and I liked Mike Watt from Firehose and the Minutemen. I saw him in Lollapalooza, and I was like, cool, this is great. So I went with a friend, and there was just this tiny little club with no stage and all the coolest looking people I'd ever seen, and I was like, whoa, I think I could play here. And so The Smell was a place that I thought like, oh, this feels like my speed. Like, I think I could, it made playing live seem accessible. Cause up until that point I was just playing in my bedroom or maybe like something at a school or something, some school, lunchtime performance. And so The Smell really sort of, then I just kept going to shows there, and I moved to downtown, and I was just a fan of all the bands that were going through there at the time. This was late 90s, early 2000s. And then I was introduced to Dean Spunt, my partner in No Age, and through another mutual friend, and we started a band called Wives. That you mentioned Laurel Stearns. She put out our full length on her shortly lived label Cold Sweat that she did with Sam Veld. So Wives was the band that we did, and it was kind of it came out of sort of love of all things Providence, and RISD, sort of Lightning Bolt and that's kind of stuff. So we were a 3-piece, and Dean was in it, but he played bass and sang, and then he would sometimes not play bass, and that's where I first learned to plug into 2 amps. I would just do guitar while he sang, and then we had a drummer. And then that band ended, and Dean and I, and we'd realized that Dean and I never wrote. Like, I would write a song with a drummer and he'd write a song with a drummer, but he and I never really wrote together as a bass player, guitar player. For some reason, it just wasn't the nature of that band. So once we kicked that drummer out and we got a different drummer, and we're trying to write songs, and it was just, we were trying to figure it out, and the whole thing just wasn't really working. Like, why are we even doing this? This is a different band now. And so we broke up that band, and then Dean and I were talking, like, what if you and I just had a band? And he was learning to play drums. He was playing drums for his girlfriend's band, Mika Miko. And he was kind of just learning drums, and he didn't want to be a tough drummer. He kind of wanted to be this sort of like simplistic drummer. And that's sort of where he was at when he started. So it was really fun. And so we kind of had this thing that was somewhere between Ramones on the drums, with like, not that those are easy drum parts to play, they're really hard, but something along that line, kind of straight drumming with a Kevin Shieldsy. So Ramones Meet My Bloody Valentine was sort of something we thought about. But we both really had a love for the band Squeeze as well.
I mean,
it's just in terms of
say no more.
Songwriting.
It's one of my favorite bands of all time.
Yeah, the Up the Junction was something we had discovered. You know what I mean? This was mid 2006. Yeah,
Tilbrook and Difford, man. And you know what's crazy about Glenn Tilbrook is that I've always made this. He's such a amazing songwriter, such an amazing voice that people forget that he's also an astounding guitar player. All of those solos, those like crazy orchestrated songs within song solos, those are him, and they're flawlessly played and executed. Like, that guy's just a different talent. He's just different.
Yeah, and the songwriting, the arrangement of the parts, the lyrics,
unbelievable.
Really, really, it was something that just was blowing our minds. So we kind of came out of, appreciating bands like U.S. Maple, Captain Beefheart, Lightning Bolt, Sonic Youth, that type of thing, and then we're trying to just write together, just he and I. And so I was doing these kind of shoegazy sort of parts, and he was playing these really straight ahead drum parts, and we made, and then with the hope, we kept saying, like, what if we could, what would the poppiest sound, what's the poppiest thing we could write that's made up of the noisiest elements, like something, if you heard just the one part, it would sound like a car crash or a crab being cooked alive, and then but can you make that into the hook of a pop song? So we sort of had this challenge. We're challenging ourselves to write these catchy songs made up of really gross sounding parts, and that was sort of where No Age sort of was birthed from.
I love a crab being cooked alive. I love that.
And so we created this, or we developed this sort of technique of writing with loops and samples. We would like make weird sounds. Some days, instead of practicing songs, we would just have these like, jam sessions where we would just make sounds and record them and loop them, and try to like just fill up a loop pedal full of just the craziest, weirdest sounds we could make. We're using guitars or drums or just hitting stuff and just create like not the sense of creating a song, but just creating a palette of fucked up sounds and save those. And then we'd go back the next day and try to write something and kind of 4/4. Like, it needs something here. Let's go back in, and kept plugging in like the palette, pressing all the buttons and pulling in all these weird sounds we'd make and laying those over. Then like, oh wait, that would change it this way. That's like, so we almost kind of created a third person, a third brain of us to like play against. It was sort of an antagonistic idea. So I could get away with playing something really poppy and upbeat and chirpy, but there's this thing of feedback going with it. And so like, that feels like an expression of my soul. Like, either one of them, one would be too noisy if I only did that, and one would be too poppy and sweet. I wouldn't respect myself if I did either one, but somehow making those two sounds come together felt like an honest expression of my creative purpose, of what I wanted to make. So that was sort of where a lot of the ideas started with in the beginning, and we would just try to crack each other up. And so, but we would go on to sound check, and say, okay, check the sample channel, check the beats, what are your tracks? And you go, okay, and we press the samples, and it's just, it just sounds horrible. And everybody in the club's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I'm like, yeah, I need that like 40 decibels louder in my my monitor. I need that. I really need that to give me a haircut, because that's the hook of the song. Then we would sound, and then we'd play the whole song together. And sure enough, that's, if we're lucky, that's this part you're going to be humming when you as you walk away. That's the hook of the song. So we've been successful a handful of times, I think, getting pretty close to doing that. And then, then you go on to do other stuff. So
that kind of I'm jealous of that kind of creativity. I am. I think I have FOMO for that kind of creativity. And that's such a great explanation of your band. And it sounds like you guys still really enjoy each other's company and being creative partners. And it's palpable. I think when you listen to your records, you know.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, we were too dumb to know any different. You know what I mean? I think if we were if we were smarter or more business minded or thought more forward thinking, we probably would have thought of other things. But I think we were always just kind of like like I said, I think because we came from a community like the Smell here in LA, where it just, we were fans of people that just pushed boundaries, and it just felt like
Yeah,
those were the most successful bands, and nobody was going anywhere in the sense of like getting signed, or we weren't, no, our favorite bands were not on any radar. And so I feel like in
sure.
some ways, we betrayed that tradition by going after the attention. I don't know how it was for you, but it was that feeling of like, I think I had the FOMO of like, or at the time of like, what's behind the velvet rope? Like, can
Sure.
we be weirdos and still get into the cool celebrity parties? Can we get into the cool
Right.
kid parties?
Right.
And so that was we figured out how to do that.
Well,
And you realize
for
the
me,
parties aren't that cool. They're actually kind of boring there.
I just, all it was for me was just playing music for a living. That's all I wanted
Yeah.
to do. And my quality of life was very low. Like I didn't mind whatever compromised living situation I had, um, not having much material object or wealth or anything. I just wanted to tour and play music with most of my life, and whatever the fallout of that was, and however much I had to pick up the pieces to make a life sort of happen when I wasn't on tour, I was prepared to do that. That's all I cared about. And if that meant success, great. But if it meant living the life of a pauper, um, okay. That was I just wanted to serve this sort of thing. And I knew that if there was another human being alive that could do it, I could do it. I never put that like, oh well, that's for these other people. I maybe it was audacity, the audacity of youth or whatever, where I was just like, well, I can fucking do that. That dude could do it. I can do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I just
How old were you when you paid rent for the first time after from
oh
a show or from
uh
tour?
18. I
Wow,
think I think 18. I mean, man,
that's
I quit
huge.
high school at 17. My dad died at 17, and my brother and
Oh,
I'm from a town about an hour north of Dallas. We'd already started a band that was doing fairly decent, and I was cocky and fucking crazy ambitious, and again just delusional and like, well, fuck it, let's go.
yeah,
And we
yeah, yeah.
just started playing, and just I've been kind of doing it ever since and haven't really looked back. But I mean,
That's
there was many
incredible.
times. Well, thank you. But there was a lot of times where I was like, "Holy shit! I hope this. I hope something cool happens." You know what I mean? Like where people you graduate high school with are like, have children and they graduated college and they're in their job and their career and they bought a house
Yeah.
and shit. And you're like fucking 30 and you live with a bunch of dudes and you're like, well, I got a tour coming up, whatever.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know it. So yeah, I remember. Yeah, yeah. Where yeah, everybody bought trucks. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm driving this just kind of beat up thing that works most of the time. Some of the time
Oh,
works,
dude.
and
I had a
it's kind
car
of
with
yeah,
I had a car with no front end on the front of it, like no bumper and shit. And it was
yeah,
fucking disgusting. Anyway.
yeah, yeah.
Well, everything you just explained. Also, like I said, it's that youthful exuberance and that sort of adherence to your original vision that I think that's what people picked up on with your band, and that's what makes bands interesting is when somebody can still sort of subconsciously get that, like, wow, there's something different about these guys. Like, I don't know what it is, but there's something different about what they're doing. Your explanation of the two sort of opposing factors of pop and noise, you couldn't play either one of them solely on their own, but together that made sense. I love that explanation, and I love that description, because that's so much of us.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what was when you guys what is your situation? Is it one songwriter or does everybody contribute?
Everybody contributes. One
No.
guy is kind of the main guy for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Our singer Tim is definitely the main guy, but everybody contributes for sure.
That's
Um,
cool.
but he's the guy that's like, he's the guy,
It's the
and
vision. Yeah.
yeah, and just but I've definitely been in those bands where ev- everybody equally does it, or I've been in bands where I do it more than other people, or whatever it might be. But to be in that's another thing I'm so envious of. To be in a successful band with one other guy. Holy shit.
Yeah, the two-piece setup. Yeah, I don't think we really knew what we were doing, but I think it felt like, just in terms of band dynamics, like I said, the band we came out of before was a three-piece, and instantly there are factions. What I mean? Instantly,
Yeah.
like even in a three-piece, I remember I talked to Mike Watt about that. He's like, no, three-piece, you got a tiebreaker. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. Everybody, then you got those guys are cool over there, and this is the one guy out. You get the different black sheep version of it. Like, the only real democracy, I think, is either, you do it by yourself or two people.
Or
you really got to figure it out. Two people, it's really the thing. Like, if I don't want to do it, he doesn't want to, or he doesn't want to do it, you're at a stalemate. You have to figure out how to compromise or how to communicate.
Great.
You could, not saying I'm not allowed to be passive aggressive and go, fine, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Kick rocks. You know what I mean? Like, somebody gets to do that every once in a while, but that's just part of, again, that's the democracy of it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but as long as the train keeps rolling forward, I think that's kind of how we figured out our roles in that. And I think, it's been good. I feel like we got really fortunate with that. And we've had third members, and our tour party's gotten quite large at times, with drivers and techs and, merch and stuff. But again, I think at this point we like to just go out on tour with it. We'll bring someone else just because we're tired of each other's stories. we've heard each other's stories now for so long. Like, can we just bring someone else in the car just to switch it up? Let's terrorize them for a while. Let's hear what they want to put on the radio.
I have FOMO of a two-piece. I have I have a FOMO of that as well. So I don't want to keep you for too much longer, but I do ask everybody if they have one that got away, and that would be like a guitar, amp, pedal, piece of gear, something. You sound like you've collected and kept a lot of your shit. So
no, but I borrowed a green Russian Big Muff when we recorded that first Wives record. My friend Sam, she let me borrow this pedal because I told her I was going to go record. She's like, "Oh, you need to take this with you," and she was right. It was incredible. We toured up the West Coast till we recorded in Portland, and so we played 5 or 6 shows with it. And as soon as I hit that thing, I was like, "Wow, nothing sounds like that, like a Russian Big Muff." I've tried other things, and there's just the big silver knob and the big chunky green thing. It's just because I always hated. And tell me if you relate to this: the distortion pedal that you kick on that makes the amp quieter.
Oh yeah, I never understood. It compresses it so much that it just kind of like, it's like, you're not doing me any favors here.
Yeah, my dream was always to hit the button and the whole thing explodes and it gets 10 times louder. It does that. And I think that Russian Big Muff was the first time that happened. Like, that's the sound I want. When I hit that thing, it was like, I get scared and I have to jump back. And so that's definitely on my bucket list of something to find. If I were ever
Did you lose it? Did you get it stolen?
Oh, no, so no, I just borrowed it. I borrowed it from her to record the record with. And I gave it back to her at the end going, wow, that's cool. I'll have to get one of those, not knowing the rarity and the kind of the hard luck of that. And I've chased down other sounds. They're not impossible to find. However,
chances are somebody's profiled it nowadays, and you can find one somewhere else.
I'm sure JHS makes a version of 16 versions you can click into of different green muffs you can make.
Actually, they might. That would be worth looking into, because I know they have that tube screamer that's got every tube screamer in it.
Right.
It's got the tree on the front of it. What it's called?
God bless them.
What? No kidding. So what else do you guys, you or the band, have coming up? Do you got anything going on?
Yeah. So, what are we doing here? I released my second solo record on Dead Strange, which is a label that Oliver from A Place to Bury Strangers started. So it's a little bit of a conceptual art project. These solo records I do, they're sort of soundtracks for films that don't exist. And then I work with a friend, Aaron Farley, to make these sort of art films, these sort of Quantascazzi-esque sort of meditations on transportation or a time of place. And so this record's called Soundfield Volume 2020. I sort of reflected on the year that wasn't, and made my ambient record. That I'm sure millions of other guitar players sat around with a delay pedal trying to make an ambient record in that lockdown time. But I'm glad
but you did it.
It came out. I can at least claim it came out. At least I got it out to the world. It's available on all the streaming devices if you're curious and want something to put on.
I mean, especially since you dropped the Konasquatsky. I always pronounce it wrong. Reference. But I mean, I think I've in my head I've wanted to attempt anything Philip Glass on noise guitar for a long time anyway. So the fact that you've hit it, I want to hear that.
Yeah.
And
So
then
yeah,
No Age,
that's out
what
there. Nothing. We might do some fests this summer. We're just kind of taking it easy. We did a run in the U.S. for fall, and then Europe this spring. And so yeah, we're just kind of taking it easy at this point. But yeah, hopefully there'll be new stuff out, and we'll be kind of keep going down the road. But
and you guys have been,
yeah.
go,
Sorry.
go ahead, sorry.
No. What were you gonna say?
I was just you guys have been putting out records with Drag City lately,
Yes,
like
yeah,
over
yeah,
the last few years. Yeah.
Yeah, they're incredible, Chicago
Oh, I know.
legends.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been really great to work with. So yeah, really stoked. Yeah, we just did our third record with them.
What a great legacy of artists and just great records they've put out.
Oh my God, yeah, and working with them, they have stories for days and everything. It was another one of those kind of dream factory sort of thing, like Willy Wonka. Like, could we go through the warehouse? Like, what do you have? What's this? What's that? What's over there? It was very similar. I think from my experience, working with Sub Pop, for our first records with them as well. Going through the Sub Pop, store and just hearing all the stories from Jonathan and Megan and everybody. It's incredible. Those really, I feel very fortunate. All the labels we've been able to work with have been like dream come true situations.
Well, I think those labels are fortunate to have you guys because what a great band, and if your partner's anything like you, what a great bunch of guys.
Thanks, man. I was going to say that also. Yeah, so I have a podcast that hopefully will be out whenever this comes out, or hoping to come out soon, called Hyphenate with Randy Randall. I got to put my name in there. Seems like a good way to go, right?
Yeah, it's a great way to go.
So yeah, and I'm going to be talking to people that do more than one thing, such as yourself, where you can be a musician / podcaster, or talk to skateboarders / photographers, or guitar players, / sculptors, all kinds of things that, I hopefully can, I'm always fascinated by people that do more than one thing, and they just have their heads sort of, I think guitar players, especially, I think it works, because we're always doing math while we're dancing on stage. You kind of got to do
That's
more
true.
than one thing at once. You're moving your body. One hand's doing one thing, the other side's doing another thing.
I think you're right. Well, you let me know, and I will always make time.
Awesome.
It's funny to say that I'm a hyphen because there's been so long that I felt like all I am is a guitar player. There's like friends of mine that they camp and they hike and they golf, or they they do art, or they fucking sew or cook or whatever. I'm like, God damn it, all I do is play guitar. That's all I do. And now I have a podcast, so I am a hyphenate, Randy. Yes. I am a hyphenate.
Diversification. Right. I love it.
Yeah, man. It's the name of the game. Well, Randy, it's been so nice meeting you, and I hope to see you in real life very, very soon. I'm sure I will. We'll circle each other, I'm sure, for years to come.
It'd be fantastic. Thanks, Zach, so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, talk soon, buddy. Bye.